Hello everybody, welcome back to the channel. JustusRStone here with my thoughts on Volume 1 of Ryohgo Narita's light novel series, Baccano. Now if you're familiar with his other series, JustusRStone, you're going to recognize a lot of the elements of that series here in Baccano. Now, Baccano came out first in Japan, so for whatever reason they decided to publish JustusRStone here first. I think it had to do with the fact that the anime series is more current for JustusRStone, so because it's not as old a series, so the interest, I think, kind of meant that they'd released that first, and then when people were crazy for that and they were screaming for Baccano, that's when they decided to finally bring it out. In any case, Baccano has a lot of the elements that if you love JustusRStone, you will love in this. So, first of all, we've got a really big cast of a variety of different characters, everything from street-level thugs to mobsters to wacky thieves that talk nothing but nonsense and have a very warped perception of themselves and of the world. We have that combination of the modern world sort of crime elements. Well, I say modern, but in this book, it's actually 1930s Prohibition New York mobsters. And we also have those elements of the sort of supernatural, which in this series is the alchemists and their search for the elixir of immortality. Now, the structure of Baccano is a little bit different than JustusRStone. This one starts in our modern era with a Japanese tourist who wins this sort of trip to New York and finds himself getting mugged in a back alley. And when he goes to the police say to him, hey, you know what? There's this guy that you should meet and he might be able to help you out. So our Japanese tourist goes to this bar, meets with this guy, and the guy says, sure, we can get your stuff back, but you know what? It might take a little while for my associates to do that. While they're at it, you seem like the kind of guy who'd be interested in a pretty cool story. And so the bulk of the book then is this character in the modern era telling a story about this mobster family he's a part of and what happened to them back in the 1930s during the era of Prohibition. Now, Baccano is a lot of fun, and the pacing is sometimes a little bit frantic because you have these numerous characters, and so there's a constant shifting of point of view. It's not like you stick with one character for a very, very long time. You're constantly moving from one person to another person to another person. Events that play out in one part of the book will then, in the next chapter, flash back to what was happening at the same time those previous events were going on. It's a really cool structure. It demonstrates a little bit more, I don't want to say intelligence, but there is definitely a lot more plotting and a lot more complexity to the plot and the writing in, I'd say, Narita's books than you notice in a number of other light novels, or at least certainly the ones that have been released in English so far. Which totally I understand why this guy's stuff is so popular. My only complaint, I think, would be is that if you have read JustusRStone, this book isn't going to shock you or surprise you, I think, the way it would if you walked into it with fresh eyes. Because if you've read JustusRStone, you've already seen how Narita handles these large people, this large group of characters that are all very unique, very interesting, how he strings sort of coincidences together to the point where you have to say that it's fate. And even in Baccano, there's quite a few characters that when I was reading them, I thought, oh my gosh, like these are totally prototypes for this character in JustusRStone. Oh, this character is totally this character in JustusRStone. Now, it didn't take away from my enjoyment of the book, but in some ways I thought, you know, if I was walking into this having not read JustusRStone, I would probably be very blown away. But because I already know what Narita is capable of and what this stuff is all about, it's just a lot of fun. And that is not a bad thing in any way. And I don't want anybody thinking I'm slagging on this book because I am most definitely not. It is a lot of fun. I really enjoyed it. And it was kind of cool to see Narita apply his sort of style and his storytelling to a different era, a different country, sort of a different criminal element. And, you know, again, like you see the structure and you see that sort of mind that works behind it all, but it still feels fresh and interesting because it's a totally different world. And now remember, this is only volume number 1. As I understand it, Baccano is a massive series. I believe there's about 21 volumes. I think I read that somewhere when I was doing just a little bit of background legwork on this one. 21 volumes, and I don't even know if that's the end. Like, I think there may still be books coming out. I'm not 100% sure. If you know, let me know in the comments down below. But again, this is a huge series, and as I understand it, of course, divorces itself more and more from Durarara, because Durarara is a very linear story about a very specific character, whereas this series, as I understand it, just from kind of peeking ahead, it seems to revolve around different sort of, like in that same sort of era, but it doesn't always stick with the same characters, or it brings back characters later on in other books that weren't in the books before them, and so there's a lot of jumping around and a lot of introductions of new people and new characters and new ideas. So I really am looking forward to seeing where this series goes. Like I said, this first volume, definitely loved it, had a lot of fun with it. Again, knowing Durarara and what it was like, I can't say this surprised me a lot, and a lot of, I think it's sort of surprise moments I found to be a bit predictable, but it's a small gripe for something that was this enjoyable. So those are my thoughts on volume number 1 of Baccano. My next light novel review was going to be on Black Bullet volume 3, but as I'm recording this, tomorrow Psychome volume number 1 comes out, a psycho love comedy. It just sounds too crazy to pass up, so I'm going to pick it up tomorrow, and that'll be my next review. I hope you'll join me for it. Hit subscribe above my head or in the description down below if you haven't already, so that you can keep up with all of my future light novel reviews. If you want to check out the volumes that I've already done, I've got that link over here on my left, plus my manga reviews. And hey, I don't just like to read books, I like to write stuff too, and I've got a link to that down in the bottom corner. Thanks very much for checking out the video, everybody. I hope to see you in my next one. Until then, bye-bye for now.